highest aspiration that your book might make?
When I first, it was a process actually, when I was first writing it. This book came out as a trilogy initially. And my beginning aspiration was, I was just so tired of people asking me why I didn't tell. Because it was so simple. Just go rat them out, you know, like, tell.
As if it's going to work that way.
Yeah, you know, just tell. And I thought, you don't get it. It's just not that simple. So I thought, well, I'm going to write a book. For 20 years, I've had therapists telling me, you need to write a book. You can write. And they knew I could write, because as we spoke earlier, I would write. And as I went through therapy, they got a little longer and a little longer. Pretty soon I was talking about it. Which is the other side of this. People don't know I had all my therapy notes were given to me. My therapist and my doctors were so convinced that I would write a book one day. They made sure I had those things. Isn't that crazy?
That's wonderful.
Nobody ever gets that. But they absolutely, they believed I had something to say that was going to be helpful. In the beginning, my very helpful thing was I wanted you to know why I didn't tell. Because, you know, it's society, it's my parents, it's the fear, it's the, you know, how all of these little factors feed into it. I thought, well, I'm just going to tell you what it's like to be me when I was 4, you know, my first memories. My very first memories, they were pretty gruesome. I thought, well, if they get that, they'll quit asking, right? Please don't ask anyone why they didn't tell, because it's a really stupid question. I hate it. And so does everybody else. This thing happened, a publisher happened to pick it up, which felt like divine intervention. I really am not a drinker, but I happen to have this bottle of Riesling. And, you know, you pop the cork, you live alone, you gotta drink some wine. So it's about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was on Facebook, because that's how my kids are all on Facebook a few years back, and that was how I was communicating with them for pictures. So I'm sitting there, and I've been through a half a bottle of wine. It's about 2:30 in the morning, and this little postage stamp ad came up on the side. And I will never forget Michelle, and I have talked about it. This is the only ad she ran. She was a brand new publisher. She had left a bigger house because she wanted to do stories of people. She thought that the big houses were missing a lot of good stories, because, you know, you had to be Stephen King or, you know, somebody.
Yeah.
Or they won't take you. I see this little ad pop up, and it says, are you a new writer? We're a new publishing house. We want to talk to you. I'm a new writer. So you could wallpaper my house at this point in rejection letters, because I was trying to get published.
Right.
And I just thought, what the heck? And I clicked on it, and I sent her the first 40 pages that I had. And 2 days later, she called me. And she said in the beginning she was taking a lot of just about anybody, because she was new. It took her 2 days to get a hold of me, because she thought that this might be pretty controversial. Matter of fact, she even talked me into this, you know, not using my own name, because she was afraid of the backlash that might come from the book. And obviously none of that happened. So that was the beginning. In the beginning it was, you know, quit asking me that. Somebody that writes a lot said that there's 2 kinds of writers. There's someone that has something to say, and there's someone who's a good storyteller. I just have something to say.
There you go.
So, you know.
And a powerful something to say.
Yeah, I was big. By the time I get to the second part, I was already starting to hear from people who had read the first part. And it started to occur to me that this wasn't going out to the people that didn't know any better. This was the people that were picking it up were people who do know. People like me, survivors,
right.
Or, you know, people that are just figuring it out. And they were thanking me. I mean, if I can do that, I would really like to tell a story about another girl from early on. She kind of turned into a fan very early. She was like my very first honest-to-God bona fide fan. And she had read it, and she contacted me on Facebook, because back then I could have my Facebook chat open, because nobody knew who I was, and, you know, they didn't care. I could pop on and off, didn't matter. But she started talking to me every day after work. it just would break your heart. She's 23 years old. She had just gotten married. Well, she'd been married 3 months at this point. She's talking to me. She's read my first 40 pages of book because, you know, I don't know what I was thinking. We were going to do some crazy Mark Twain kind of thing, just put it out. I didn't want to, again, did not want to offend anybody with my book and my words and my story. So we were going to put out little pieces. So then they just buy little pieces. If they didn't like it, they didn't have to buy the next one. My publisher thought that was a little funny, but that's what we were going to do. That's how it got turned into a trilogy. But so at any rate, she's read the first 40, 50 pages, and she started texting me on Facebook every night. And I'm talking to her. So she'd been married for 3 months. She's not consummated her marriage. She can't. She just can't do it. She's got history. I'm not sure what religion it was. I just know it wasn't Catholic. But it was her priest is what she said. She tried to tell her parents. I mean, she's a grown woman trying to tell her parents because she doesn't know what to do. She finds herself in this place. Well, I just got married. Now I can't get out of this anymore. I have to do these things. And her husband is just a saint. He's just, take as long as you want. You know, we'll be okay. And so she's over here frantic. You know, I'm telling my parents. My parents are calling me a liar. Her parents were really good friends with this priest. You know, they golfed together. They socialized together. They're very good friends. And she is told in no uncertain terms, didn't happen. This didn't happen. She's asking me what to do. She said, you've been through it. You've been through all this stuff. I must have the magic answer, is what she's thinking. And what I did say to her for 6 full months is, I can't help you. You need to see a therapist. You need to see a counselor. You need somebody that you can talk to who can walk you through these hard parts. That was 4 years ago. Sorry. She's actually included in my very private Facebook page today. But she has a beautiful little boy. And mine just, it was so humbling. And that happens to me on a regular basis anymore. People read my book. What I discovered is the book didn't matter because I had a big mouth and I had something to say. It mattered because people, oh, I can't believe I'm going to cry. People just need to hear it. They need to hear. They need to look at this and know that they can come out the other side. I've gotten letters from, I got a really profound letter from a woman. She's in her 40s. She was writing me, and I could tell she was in crisis. I kind of borrowed something that I got from one of my therapists when I was in crisis. That, you know, you can get through anything for 15 minutes. Just live for 15 minutes at a time, and before you know it, you're going to be into a week, and you're going to be okay. And I had said many other things to her. What she told me a year later, and she wrote a really nice piece. As a matter of fact, it's published on my blog. It's from suicide letter to survival letter. She had not had any therapy for what had happened to her, and it was really bad. She had lost her son because of what was considered mental illness, and she just didn't think she could do it anymore. And she sat down at her computer with a gun to write a letter to her son. And my letter back to her, talking about the 15 minutes, is the first thing she saw. And she read it. For whatever reason, she felt the need to read that before she did the deed. And she said she got to that part where it said you could get through anything for 15 minutes, and she got up from the table, shut the computer, left the gun, and never went back. She literally never walked back into that house. And, you know, I mean, there's a whole story there all by itself, but a year later, is when I found out what had happened, and she had written this to me. That's what I want my book to do, is I want people to know you're not alone. I felt so alone. When I was 33 years old, I thought I was the only one that this had ever happened to. I thought that I was so dirty and so bad, and I was so guilty, and I just didn't deserve anything. We deserve everything.
You're not only not alone, you are touching hundreds and thousands of lives. You've just begun. I know that. I know that from the people that I have talked to. I know that from reading your book. I know that from being a life that you have touched.
There's a brutally honest, there's a lady that, I'm really proud of this, Ellen Brazier is a writer. I just found out that she's actually been following me. But she remembered when my first little book came out, it was all unedited and, you know, didn't have the nice professional, seriously professional job that I had done when this one came out. But she said that I was brazen to tell the truth that way. I'm really proud of that. She's got awards for writing about the Holocaust. And she actually, a couple of months ago, wrote me and said, I've just been watching you. She said, I just watched you grow, and I've watched your book grow. And she knew the difference between when it had been just barely edited to it was professionally. Well, we call them the Nazi editors. It's just so brutal. It's a brutal process. That's what I want. I want people who were not abused to read it and understand those people that they love and care about that were. And I want people who were abused to read it and know that they can come out the other side and it'll be okay.
That's a beautiful, beautiful purpose and aspiration, and you are doing it. And I was going to say one person at a time, but that's not true. You're doing it hundreds at a time.
It's doing pretty well.
Yes, it is, especially with your radio show on top of it.
Yes, that's fun. We were talking about kids and the texting. You know, you lose like 70% of the meaning by texting because we're so visual. So you're right. You're going to see it before you hear it.
The body speaks sometimes differently than the mouth does. Emotions speak. Sometimes they tell you something you didn't even want to know.
Oh, yeah. You know, this interesting point. My father used to talk about pedophiles. What horrible people they were. They should all be shot in the head.
Right.
He was molesting kids back and forth across the United States.
Well, that happens with all sex trafficking. Of course, that was not necessarily trafficking because he wasn't sending them out. He was just taking them in.
Right.
But the point being that in sex trafficking, even religious sex trafficking, such as Warren Jeffs, would get up there Sunday and preach from the pulpit how these people should suffer blood atonement for not obeying God, and here he is molesting the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
that's a cover.
It's just crazy. It's just craziness. And in a weird kind of way, it reinforced that what he was doing to me wasn't wrong. Because if he was doing that, if he saw someone doing that, he would shoot them. That was what he would say. Put a bullet in their head.
And that's why you had to be quiet, because he was your dad and you were protecting the family.
You know, yeah, and he would. And at the same time, if it was really bad, you know, why would he be talking about these people who are doing this bad thing? You know, it's just craziness that goes on in a kid's head. It's like, he's doing it, but it's okay because he would hurt somebody who was really doing it.
Well, it's like Warren Jeffs molesting these young girls, marrying these 12-year-old brides.
Right.
And he would preach to us that people that didn't believe in him deserved to be destroyed for time and all eternity because they weren't obeying God. And they were evil.
Right.
These people that didn't believe in him were evil. People were actually bringing 12-year-old daughters to him to be married because they thought he was a prophet of God and it was an honor. Can you imagine how sick this would be for the little girl who's in the middle of the barter?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I can't imagine. Because I was bartered off.
Right.
You know, those drunk, nasty old men. I mean, you know.
Yeah. And what does the woman count? Nothing. She's property.
That's right.
She's a breedable servant, period. And her life is worth nothing. She's property.
Well, I was pretty worthless to my father by the time I was 16, 17 years old. You know, he'd lost interest. He needed more young kids. And he'd already burned through all of his friends. He sold me as a virgin. I think I was like 3. I wasn't a virgin. There wasn't anything innocent about me at 14, 15 years old.
You were totally innocent. You were just victimized.
Yeah, he would sell me as a virgin. And one man got really angry when he found out I wasn't, and took it out on me. So now, you know, you're not getting just beat up by your parents and your family. You know, it's outside the house too. It's all reinforced. I mean, the things that they do to these kids, it's a reinforcement. Well, I almost can't talk about it. It's already going on at home. The people who gave birth to you are not taking care of you. And then you get outside and they've passed you on to other people who have no interest in taking care of you.
No, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody.
Nobody cares about you. The law doesn't care about you. Nobody cares about you. Because you can't tell without putting your life in danger.
Right.
That's another subject. It's why the lady next door who sees something going on doesn't tell. Why do so many people say it's none of my business? I will not mention it. Tell us why that happened.
Well, the stigma. I guess that the easiest way for me to talk about that is what had happened to a friend of mine who just wrote her book. And it's about her abusive childhood. And she just recently got the book. I mean, you're so excited when you open that first box of books. It's just magical. Because there it is, you know. So she has a very good friend, a male, and he has had a habit of taking in young boys, not through the foster care system, mind you, which has got its own problems, but just taking them in. And there are people who think he's just the salt of the earth best guy, which is what she thought. Of course, there's other people that think, you know, something's not quite right over there, but they don't want to intrude. They don't want to, you know, be considered busybodies. They don't, you know, they don't want to do wrong. And they don't want to lose the friendship of a good neighbor. You know, the guy waters my lawn, he washes my house when I'm gone. You know, we have coffee together. There's just the list is endless. But at any rate, they were good enough friends that she felt free, and on many occasions had just walked into the house and announced herself. Well, as she walked into the living room, he was on the sofa with 3 of these boys. They've got their faces in each other's crotches, and he's got his hands on this boy's bottom. And when she walked in, she was a little taken aback, but he started tickling the boys and, you know, shoot them out, and he just got up and started talking to her. You know, she said it was a little out of character because usually if the kids are watching TV, never shoots the boys out. But she was in actual denial about what she had seen, which is why she called me. She says, I can't believe this. And she says, those kids look so happy, she said to me. And I said, you've forgotten that you just wrote your own story? You were happy. You looked happy. I looked happy. Everybody thought I was Daddy's little girl. Because when we were out in public, I took care of my dad. You know, I loved him best. That was very important. So, you know, appearances appear to be everything. So now she says, he's my good friend. I can't turn him in. He's best friends with my brother. You know, I can't turn him in. What if I'm wrong? She says. And I said, what did you see? You saw this with your eyes. What did you see? She says, you know, she tells me again, she says, I know what you meant. She says, but if I turn him in anonymously, she says, they can do that. He's still going to know it was me because I walked in the door and caught him. I said, if he's doing something wrong, he's going to be so busy trying to figure out who it was and who might have seen him through a window or at the park or wherever it is he does these things. He's not going to know it was you. And so what? Do you really want to be friends with this guy? And she's struggling. This is somebody who was abused every bit as badly as I was, who had to play that whole game of my life is perfect and I live in this perfect household, even down to making up stories about my fun family life. Yet even she could sit and talk to me and say, I don't think I can turn him in. He won't be my friend anymore.
But that goes right back to the childhood fear, hers and yours. What are the real consequences of turning somebody in your life? What were they? The real consequences. It was
death.
More than friendship.
It was death, beating. I wouldn't have anywhere to live. They'd throw me out. Oh, and my favorite, you're going to get sent to parochial school, the Catholic schools. They were going to send me to the Catholic schools. I grew up thinking they must be horrible, scary places. It was something awful.
So this woman, in real life, if she turns in her next door neighbor, who's a man, who's bigger and stronger than her, what is her subconscious telling her the possibilities are?
She will lose. He will win. That's the bottom line.
Because he can sabotage her?
He can sabotage her. He's bigger. You know, you just turn into this instant child. They're bigger, stronger, faster, quicker, smarter. They're just ahead of you. They're always ahead of you.
And they can do things that you know darn well they did to hurt you badly, but you can't prove it.
Right. Because...
Such as destroy your property, etc.
Oh, yeah. And
because you're living next door.
They do. And that's because, yeah, you're absolutely right. That was our experience. Things would be broken. I had a guitar I worked an entire summer to save up for. $200 back in the day was a lot of money.
Right.
And I had this guitar, and I was so proud of it. He busted it up and threw it in the fireplace because I had displeased him.
So what do you think is going to happen to this lady who just wrote her book if she tells that her next-door neighbor is a child molester?
He'll destroy her.
And even if he doesn't, the fear is so strong, the price is too high.
Yeah.
I
do want you to know she did do it, though.
Good.
She did do it.
Good.
She feels awful, and she's kind of back in therapy. So how sad is that? You turn somebody in for doing something that you know is wrong, and you have to go into therapy.
To cope with the fear.
To cope with the fear.
This is something we need to help alleviate in every single community. There needs to be more widely published anonymous hotlines.
There do.
Every community needs this. I have seen so many times, and I've heard so many stories of people that have witnessed horrible things. What did you do? Nothing. I ran away. I never mentioned it again.
Yeah.
And that's the common behavior.
And I would say, if you think something is happening, particularly to a kid, you need to turn it in. Err on the side of the child and let the courts sort it out. It's unfortunate today. I almost hate to bring this up, but people kind of use this in divorce cases. You make it hard for people like me. When you go to court and you tell a blatant lie about your child, and you say that your child is being molested by and women are really guilty of this, that my child's being molested by him. Well, why didn't you turn him in while you were married? Well, I tried to, but nobody would listen to me. I'm not going to say that everybody who says that their child was molested by their ex-husband is lying, because I know better than that. By taking these things into the court and making the accusation when you know dang well it's not true, you hurt people like me. You hurt other children who are trying to get into the system. These are tough stories to tell, and it's tough to get them heard. Fortunately, today we've got some wonderful, wonderful mental health experts that are good at it, that are so good they can wade their way right through this big facade. And these people are subject to having to see them. There are always going to be, as long as there are laws, people that are going to try to find the way to use them to their advantage, good or bad. Right. Therefore, we must always create the check and balance. Right. And sometimes we say, well, we can't create the check and balance because it costs money. It costs a whole lot more not to. Oh, millions, billions, billions of dollars. If we could eradicate I always say child abuse, but the truth of the matter, for me, I'm always talking about sexual abuse. But if we could just eradicate that one thing, we would eliminate the national debt in a year and a half.
Well, of course we could. If we would have homes for women and children that are in need and re-educate them and teach them how to provide for themselves by getting an education and getting out there and become independent, we would save millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on third, fourth, fifth generation welfare people that are still controlled by drug addict fathers, cult fathers,
it's absolutely,
etc.
It's generational. This is happening. You know, what happened to me, in many ways, I just feel so lucky because I did get out. But I talk to people every day who say to me, I was raped by my dad, and I married a man who raped my children. And I know somebody right now, her grandchildren, it just keeps repeating itself because we learn this behavior, and if we don't put a stop to it, we teach our children.
We accept certain behaviors.
Right.
If they're wrong and we accept them, we can't expect to change them. We've got to stop accepting it.
That's right.
We're afraid of the consequences of facing the truth. We're afraid to look at America's very sick sexual problems. We, as women, need to take back the gateway to morality in this country because nobody else is going to do it. Now, I shouldn't say nobody. There are a few men that will, of course. But primarily the women are the victims. And as long as we accept it silently as martyrs, we're going to get it. Because they don't care about us.
Right.
People that care about you don't do that.
You're talking about people who are considered to be disposable in society.
Of course, and women are more and more disposable.
No, that's true. I do have a lot of men who follow me. Well, I'm being told it's because of the way I wrote the book, they could relate to it.
Right.
I don't really talk about gender in there. It's just a kid. It's a kid's head for the most part. Did you feel that way?
Yes, actually, I did feel that way, and it's a marvelous book. I think that we have many, many wonderful men, especially young men, that are standing up for equal human rights, that people cannot be discriminated and should not be discriminated against because of gender or color or race or religion or nationality. That's what America's all about. Well, but those of us who stand back and accept it, and we look at the millions of women that are in these statistics, and the women aren't doing anything about it, that's a call to action. But per capita, the women have got to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's the numbers for women are so much more. But what I found, I've sort of gotten over it. In the beginning, when it dawned on me, I was a little angry. But if a guy comes out and says the same thing I have been saying, he has instant following. It's so much more important. And I've had people say to me, well, you have to be a little more understanding if it's a man. And it's like abuse is abuse.
That's correct.
But it is more important to society if a man was abused than if a woman is abused. Government's just all backwards. There's no accountability. No one's accountable for anything.
Thank you so much for sharing who you are, what you are, and how you are, because you're changing how other people look at life, how they deal with life, and how they approach their future. Thank you, Annie. You're the best.
Thank you. Thanks.
You're great.